But I'm Robert Hicks. I'm Master Blender for the Global, Master Blender for Teacher's Highland Cream, for Lafroig, Isle Malt and for Ardmore. I started in the industry back in 1964 in a very small company where I learned all about the whisky industry and was trained as a blender. In 1970 I then joined a multinational corporation as assistant blender, and over the next 35 years went from assistant blender, deputy blender, blender, master blender, and have been a master blender for the past 20 years. I'm consultant master blender, which means that the quality of the new brands is my baby, and that's always been. But what I really enjoy doing now, because I have the time, is going abroad and talking about whiskies, teachers and Lafroig and Ardmore, because that's really what I love to do. The difference between a blended Scotch whisky and a single malt whisky is that blended Scotch is always looked upon as a poor relation, and honestly it's not. 93% of all whisky sales is blended Scotch whisky. Without blended Scotch whisky sales, we would still be a cottage industry in Scotland, and we'd only be selling a few thousand, maybe a few 100,000 cases a year. It was blended Scotch whisky that made Scotch whisky what it was. Let's go back to the 1860s when we were allowed to blend whisky. Prior to that, the law said you couldn't mix whiskies together, whether it be malts or anything. Grain whisky was developed in the 1830s, and by the 1860s the law came out that said you could mix malt whiskies and grain whiskies together, thereby producing a blend. This meant that the harsh malt whiskies, and they were quite harsh in those days, they were exceedingly heavily treated. You would be lucky if they were months old, possibly weeks old. It was really only the drink of the working class and the Highlanders and the clan chiefs, the people with money and nobility, would not drink malt whisky. They would drink clarets, wines, sherries, what have you. We developed blending back in the 1860s, and it made whisky more easy to drink. That was part of the success of Scotch whisky. The other part was phylloxera, which is a little bug that came in from America and decimated the vines in Europe. So if you have no vines, you've got no grapes, you've got no wine, sherries or anything. So they said, what do we drink? And I hate to say it, but in those days gin was looked upon as not the right thing for people to drink. So they automatically changed to blended whisky, and for at least 100 years blended whisky was the main whisky that was sold. I mean, I started in '64 and I sat with the two other master blenders some years ago, and we actually tried to think of how many single malt whiskies were sold when we started. But 3 of us started in the 60s. We could only get 8 that we actually could really confident of that. We maybe missed a couple, so let's say there was maybe 10 or 12. That was it. You look along the duty free now, how many bottles of malt whisky is there? It's still only 32%.
Sorry about that,
shall I say, as a master blender, I would far rather make up blends, because I can play with the flavours. I've got a palette of 86 different malt whiskies in Scotland, and I've got 7 grain whiskies, and I can draw the flavours from them, put them together the way a painting does. I make up flavours, and I can design flavours. With malt whisky, you're limited to what the distillery itself produces. That is it. You can't do anything with that except change the maturation style, the type of cask you use, the size of casks, but not much more. I've been doing this for 45 years, and on a normal day I could do 600, 700, 800 samples. But smell the whisky and think about flavours. Now, you should smell ripe apples, sweet red apples. You should also smell a little touch of like a bonfire. Think of an autumn. Walking along a lane, country lane in the autumn. You've got the smell of the leaves. I call, for me, you know, the word I use for teachers is it's an intense flavour. It's a brown flavour. It's sort of a autumnal flavour. It's very, very rich. Now, what I want you to do is to taste the whisky my way. I want you to drink water with whisky. I don't want you to drink whisky with water. Okay. What I want you to do is a glass in each hand, a glass of water in one hand and a glass of whiskey in the other. I want you to take a sip of water, hold it in your mouth, right behind your teeth, and then take a sip of whiskey straight into it. Right. Swirl it round, then swallow. Open the lips. You'll actually taste all the flavours, but you don't get any alcohol. One of my brands is Lafroig, and I love drinking Lafroig over ice. Just because the ice gives, as it melts, gives you just enough water to release it. But if you like ice with whiskey, do. It doesn't make any difference. I like drinking teachers through a meal, but I'll drink it with a little drop of water, maybe 50-50, because I'm not after the alcohol side. What I'm looking for is the flavour to cleanse the palate so I can enjoy the food. With teachers being a slightly peated whiskey, slightly smoky whiskey, it goes brilliantly with the likes of smoked fish, game, shellfish, let me think, venison. Oh, it goes great with venison. A lot of people know about single malts because so much is written about it, you can get magazines about it, but a lot of people don't know what blended whiskey is.